Good evening, and thank you for joining me for another Boring Books for Bedtime. I hope tonight's selection provides all the boredom your busy brain needs to quiet down and let you get some sleep. Before we begin, I'd like to give a special shout out of thanks to some new members of our Patreon family: Cherry, Michelle, Doris, Amy, Celeste, and another Cherry, which is a little bit delightful. Thank you all so much for supporting this podcast. By becoming members of Patreon, you help us remain 100% listener supported and ad-free for everyone, and it's very much appreciated. If you're interested in supporting Boring Books for Bedtime and finding out more about the perks available to subscribers, including collections by topic and exclusive episodes heard nowhere else, you'll find a link to Patreon in the show description. You'll also find a link to buymeacoffee.com, where you can support us with a one-time tip, no subscription required. I hope you'll take a moment to check them out. Now, let's read and relax. Find a comfortable spot. Adjust your volume. Take a nice deep breath in. Let it out slowly. And off we go. Tonight, let's enjoy another new listener request and relax with the Railway Traveler's Handy Book of hints, suggestions, and advice before the journey, on the journey, and after the journey. First published in 1862 by Lockwood & Co., Stationers' Hall Court, London. Let's begin. The Railway Traveler's Handy Book. A few preliminary remarks. The extension and ramification of railroads throughout the habitable globe, together with the daily increase of railway traffic, are matters of notoriety. Most persons undertake a journey at least once in the course of the year, and it is no exaggeration to state that every man, woman, and child may be ranked as a railway traveler. Nay, more, there are those who pass the greater part of their lives in a railway carriage, flitting incessantly from one station to another, and only breaking off their travels at night to resume them on the morrow. If therefore railway traveling be so general, and railway travelers form so numerous a class, it may be reasonably anticipated that a work touching upon the comforts and discomforts, the conveniences and inconveniences of locomotion will meet with universal acceptance and approval, especially when it is considered how valuable is even one of these practical hints or suggestions, of which some hundreds will be found in this little volume. In order to render the work more easy of reference, it is divided into 3 periods: before the journey, on the journey, after the journey. This arrangement will admit of any special item of information being lighted on at once, while the natural order which the various items take will render the manual a never-failing remembrancer and referee from the moment the railway traveler conceives the idea of his journey until he has accomplished it. At the outset of our task, we are desirous of bespeaking the special attention of the various classes of railway travelers by a few remarks which may prove individually applicable and favorably dispose each class towards the objects of general interest which follow. Before the journey, business travelers. Commercial travelers and others who pass a great portion of their time on railways would succeed in deriving much valuable information during their progress by dint of observation and inquiry. There are certain ins and outs of railway traveling which do not appear on the surface, but which are nevertheless intimately connected with its working. These matters, although of little moment to the occasional traveler, are worthy of being ascertained and treasured up by him whose movements in life may be said to be regulated by a railway timetable. It is impossible to define what we mean more intelligibly than by calling them wrinkles. For example, some one train may be more comfortable to travel by than the others. It may be less crowded and carry a better class of company than ordinarily, or the carriages and general accommodation may be of a superior kind. Innumerable hints of a similar nature may be gleaned, and chiefly by placing oneself in communication with station masters, guards, porters, and others connected with the line. Through the same medium, much local information may be obtained, which will serve as some sort of guide to commercial operations. For instance, a traveler arrives at a place he has not hitherto visited. He wishes to find out a certain class of traders in the town, but he is totally ignorant of their names, addresses, or extent of business. The railway officials connected with the station have probably resided in the neighborhood for many years, and in a few moments they could furnish every particular. In doing this, they need betray no confidence, nor step aside from the straight path of duty, while the alighting passenger would be materially benefited by these few minutes' colloquy. There are numerous other suggestions tending to the economizing of time and money, the avoiding of inconvenience, and the enhancing of personal comfort. These may be gained by the business traveler making up his mind not to miss a single opportunity of inquiry and observation, and not to be backward in reducing them to practice. Pleasure seekers. We will suppose a person about to start on an excursion, unpledged to any particular route, and solicitous only of obtaining the greatest amount of pleasure for his outlay. In such cases, it would be an excellent plan to collect the various excursion schemes put forth by the railway companies, to compare the advantages offered one with the other, to note the several stopping places on the route, and if these be not familiar, to glean by aid of guidebook or gazetteer some knowledge of the places themselves, together with the objects of interest by which they are surrounded. Thus the cost of the trip and the privileges to be enjoyed may be ascertained with something like reasonable certainty. With regard to pleasure-seeking, it may be observed that each person has his peculiar notion of what pleasure is. Most of us plead guilty to a hobby, and nearly every man has a predilection for some sport, amusement, or pursuit, which he follows at every opportunity and enjoys with greater zest than all others. The geologist with his hammer, the entomologist with his hand net, the botanist with his microscope, the angler with his rod, and the sportsman with his gun, each presses forward with an ardor unaccountable to his neighbor, and in the prosecution of his particular enterprise finds an enjoyment which he would neither forego nor exchange. The opportunities for indulging in any special diversion will be found to favor particular localities. These facts are duly recorded in topographical works, may be readily referred to, and will thus put the pleasure seeker in possession of a certain amount of capital to start with. In like manner, the mere sightseer may ferret out in what direction are to be found the largest store of curiosities and marvels on which to feast his wondering eyes. Health seekers. Lord Byron declared that the most exquisite of human enjoyments consisted in being borne swiftly through the air on horseback. Dr. Johnson, when being whisked along the high road rapidly in a post-chaise, turned to his travelling companion Boswell and exclaimed with a jubilant air, "Sir, there are few things in life better than this." Following up this theory of sensation, we are tempted to declare that the being whirled through space at the rate of 30 or 40 miles an hour is most pleasurable in its effects. To the overwrought brain, or the overstrained mental faculties, to the toiler who has sunk into a state of exhaustion, this rapid locomotion acts as a most agreeable fillip. Nor is this to be found alone in the journey itself. The bustle of the station, the incidents of the platform and waiting room, the chance chat in the railway carriage, all tend to arouse the faculties and to impart to them a freshness which they lose in silent and persistent labor. But there is a possibility of carrying this beyond due limits, as the following incident will show. A gentleman in a delicate state of health was recommended by his physician to reside by the seaside. Having business in London which required his frequent attention, he determined upon selecting Brighton as his residence, so as to be within easy reach of the metropolis. The South Coast Railway runs a train to and from Brighton and London, a distance of 50 miles, in an hour and a quarter. Of this train, the gentleman referred to arranged to avail himself twice a week. After a few days sojourning at Brighton, his health became greatly improved. On the first occasion of his going to town, however, he was seized with a violent headache, which grew worse as the day wore on, and which, after his journey down, left him in such a state of pain and prostration that he was obliged to seek his bed immediately on his arrival home. The next morning he had partially recovered, and in 2 or 3 days he regained his former improved condition of health. On his second visit to town, he was tormented with the same kind of violent headache, succeeded by an equal amount of prostration. Nature and the beneficent sea breezes once more revived him. When on the third occasion of a journey to London, he was attacked by precisely the same symptoms as on the 2 previous occasions. He now thought it time to make known these facts to his medical adviser, who was not slow in discovering the peculiar relation in this instance between cause and effect. The simple truth was that the performance of a journey of 100 miles within so short a space of time and at such a rapid pace had too greatly excited the nervous system, and had otherwise disturbed the functions of a delicate organization and a debilitated frame, and the force of this conclusion was afterwards made apparent by a cessation of the headaches with a discontinuance of the journeys. To the jaded and toil-worn, therefore, we would say, close your books, leave the desk, fly the study, hasten to the nearest railway station, and take a return ticket for some 12 or 15 miles. On arriving at your destination, scud down the green lanes and across the fields, setting out at a brisk pace and maintaining it until your return to the departure station. in a couple of hours' time. The journey homeward will appropriately cap the achievement, which, although we do not vaunt as a panacea for all the ills of life, we nevertheless declare from experience to be one of the very best repairers of health and restorers of spirits. Season ticket holders. When a person makes up his mind to reside at some place accessible by railway, there are several circumstances, supposing him to be a man of business and a frequent traveler, which it would be important for him to investigate. In the first place, he should ascertain upon what terms a season ticket can be procured, for virtually the railway fare is a part of the rent, and therefore ought to enter into the calculation of the probable cost when taking a house under these conditions. Secondly, he should learn the times of arrival and departure, so as to make sure that they are conformable both with his commercial and domestic arrangements. Next, he should glean whether the trains are habitually punctual or unpunctual. To a man of business, the arrival of a train even a few minutes behind time is apt to prove of serious consequence. In most government offices, the employees are compelled to sign on, as it is called, when they arrive in the morning, and as the hour strikes, a line is drawn across the book of entry, thus obliging all who come after to place their signatures below this line. By this simple arrangement, the names of latecomers can be gathered at a glance. When this occurs a few times only and at distant intervals, it is usually visited with a fine or a mild reproof, but a frequent repetition of late arrival brings down upon the head of the offender condign punishment, and sometimes results in dismissal. In ordinary employments, this want of punctuality in commencing the duties of the day is regarded as one of the worst traits in the character of a man of business, and greatly tends to shake the confidence of the employer. Even in cases where a person is responsible only to himself, this detention is always provocative of annoyance and is frequently attended with loss. Another consideration is the distance at which the place of business is situated from one terminus and the place of residence from the other. For if the interval between these 2 points is protracted, it follows that the getting to one from the station will occupy more time than is consumed by the journey itself. Nor is the distance alone to be regarded. The means of conveyance should be inquired into, both as regards the cost and the dependence that can be placed upon them. Finally, it would not be amiss to ascertain whether, upon extraordinary occasions, the company would be disposed to accord the privilege of a special train, as when, for instance, a party was made up to visit the theater or other entertainment terminating after the time of departure of the last ordinary train. Travelers in general. But whatever be the motive which impels a person to undertake a journey, whether it be love, law, business, pleasure, politics, or self, all render themselves for the time being amenable to the same regulations, subject to the same wants, and susceptible to the same ameliorations. Glancing at these in their natural order, and assuming the intending traveler to be sitting in his room a day or 2 previous to his departure, turning his future movements over in his mind, the first things which will commend themselves to his attention are those useful publications known as railway guides. Of these, there are two in common use, the ABC and Bradshaw. Both are published on the first of each month, and both contain the latest alterations in the fares, times, etc., up to the moment of going to press. Generally speaking, these alterations are not material, and the guide for 1 month might in the majority of cases be made to do duty for another. Still, the possibility exists of a change having been made, to be prepared for which it is as well to possess the publication of the current month. And by the by, when the purchase is made, the date on the cover should be referred to, in order that a guide of the time past may not be bought in mistake for one of the time present. The ABC Railway Guide is, as its title imports, a work easy of reference, the names of the places being alphabetically arranged, and the times of departure and arrival, the fares, etc., being so clearly given as to prevent the possibility of a mistake. It is, however, chiefly adapted for the use of persons who have only to proceed direct from one point to another, without being doomed to thread the labyrinth of branch lines, junctions, etc. Bradshaw, the well-known Bradshaw, is the other guide taken into the railway traveler's confidence. This work contains a mass of information compressed into the very smallest compass, but on that account, and by reason of various signs and symbols having to be made use of, it is not so easy of interpretation as it might be. This fact has given rise to innumerable witticisms on its unintelligibility, and we must confess that although we are acquainted with a few of the initiated, to whom Bradshaw is as easy as ABC, we have never yet met with a lady who did not regard it as a literary puzzle, while the majority of the sterner sex have failed to master its intricacies. Knowing by experience the great value of this vade-mecum, and desirous that others may equally appreciate it, we will endeavor to furnish a key to some of the most prominent difficulties in a few brief suggestions which may be collectively termed How to Read Bradshaw. 1. When you are searching for the name of a place, refer to the alphabetical index at the commencement of the guide, and you will be directed to the appropriate page. 2. To ascertain the time of departure from or arrival at any place, run your eye along the figures which cross the page in a line with the name of the station. 3. When a train passes a station without stopping, it is indicated by 2 dots thus, ... 4. When a train stops at some given point without proceeding further, it is notified by a thick black line, or by the word stop. If any train be shown below in the same column, it is an independent one. 5. The course of the main line is denoted by thick marks down the right-hand side of the station columns. Deviations or branches are indicated by thin lines. 6. A thin line in the middle of trains thus represents a shunt and is intended to show the continuous route of the traveler. 7. Wavy lines thus have a twofold use. First, to direct the eye into the next train, and second, to show that passengers do not travel past the stations opposite to which the wave line appears. 8. The various letters as A, B, C, etc., occasionally met with in the tables, usually refer to explanatory notes at the foot of the page. 9. through routes, steamboat, omnibus, and coach communication in connection with the trains will be found towards the end of the guide after the tables of the ordinary lines. Finally, beware of mistaking the up trains for the down trains and vice versa. Be quite certain that you have learnt the proper time of arrival or departure, and refer a second time to prevent the possibility of error. Ascertain beyond doubt that the train you intend going by stops at the station for which you are bound. All sorts of exceptional cases are mixed up with many intermediate stations, and the ordinary routine is departed from in reference to market days and other local exigencies. Much valuable information respecting hotels, boarding houses, apartments, etc., in the various towns in the United Kingdom will be found scattered through the latter portion of the guide. The glowing terms in which nearly every proprietor speaks of his establishment must not, of course, be interpreted literally. Nevertheless, it is something to ascertain the names and whereabouts of these temporary homesteads, and in these days of extortion and anti-extortion, such notifications as the following are worthy of being treasured in the memory. For example, no charge for candles at this hotel, a fixed charge for attendance, a list of refreshments exhibited in the coffee room. Visitors are not expected to take wine, etc., etc. Preparation for the journey, packing, etc. Most persons appear to have an instinctive horror of packing up. Some are happily in a position to depute this business to others, but by nearly all the process is avoided until the very last moment. The consequence is that things are hastily thrown together pell-mell without any attempt at order or arrangement. Dresses are rumpled, coats are creased, linen soiled, rough articles are brought into unseemly contact with the delicate, the dirty associated with the clean, to say nothing of tricklings of ink and streams of oil, which are apt to escape from their ill-secured receptacles. Our first piece of advice is that railway travelers should confine their luggage within as narrow limits as possible, not encumbering themselves with a number of useless articles, or with such as may be obtained at the point of destination as readily as at home. To take, in point of fact, only the necessary and the indispensable. The Romans gave the name of impedimenta to their baggage, a word which pretty clearly interprets both ancient and modern opinion. The gallant General Sir Charles Napier declared that the only equipment required by an Indian officer comprised a second shirt, 2 pairs of socks, and a toothbrush. But although few would be inclined to subscribe to the latter scanty outfit, there cannot be a doubt that the traveler who is able to carry his luggage in his hand is a comparatively free man, while he who has many packages to look after is for the time being a slave. It should be also borne in mind that extra luggage entails extra expense. Every trunk, portmanteau, or bandbox carries with it a certain charge, and can scarcely be touched by the tips of strange fingers without having an impost levied upon it. There are numerous instances, however, where large quantities of luggage cannot be escaped. In such cases, it would be advisable to adopt the following course. Classify the articles in such a manner that the same sorts shall have separate boxes or distinct places assigned them. Thus pack all the heavy articles by themselves, or dispose them in the bottoms of the boxes, etc. Place all the articles not required for immediate use by themselves, and those that are so required by themselves. Carry the articles which you will need when you reach your journey's end, such as night dress, brushes and combs, etc., in a traveling bag, so that you may be spared the pain and labor of uncording and unpacking at a moment when it goes sorely against the grain. Attach to the inner side of the lid of each package a list of the various articles which such package contains. Then number each package, and finally make a memorandum of these lots with their corresponding numbers in your pocketbook, so that when at any time you require a particular article, you can, by referring, at once determine where such article is to be found. If you are solicitous about the exterior of your luggage, envelop it in canvas. The pulling and hauling, the pitching and tossing, the friction and jostling, which packages are subjected to in travel, to say nothing of the paste brush which the railway porter impartially applies to the effects of patrician and plebeian, are not calculated to improve the appearance of polish or paint. When packages are corded, they should be corded tightly and securely. In such cases, the cordage is regarded as the legitimate medium for lifting and carrying. Therefore, if it be loose, or the knot insecurely fastened, prepare yourself to see your package lying smashed on the ground, its contents strewn in every direction, and the porter gazing at you with the cord in his hand and a reproachful look on his features for having supplied him with so treacherous a holding. The directing of luggage is a matter of no small importance, carelessness in this particular frequently causing the miscarriage of packages. The name and address should be written legibly and in a bold hand. Observe also that the name of the place should be in larger letters than the name of the person, and however much this may offend our self-esteem, it must be borne in mind that in the hurry and bustle of departure, the destination is what is first required to be known. When address labels are attached by tying, they should be of leather, parchment, or some such unterrible material. One may frequently note a strip of writing paper with the superscription traced on it in microscopic characters, the said strip partially strangled with twine or thread and tenderly attached to the handle of a package, an arrangement that may answer the purpose of indicating the birthplace of the embryo lupine in a garden plot, but ill adapted for the rough usage of the railway station and the exigencies of the luggage van. Cards of address fastened on by tacks are not to be recommended, for the cards are apt to be torn away by contact with other packages, leaving the tacks standing alone as monuments to the memory of the departed. The best plan is to paste the labels onto the luggage, as they will thus more certainly retain their position. For this purpose, adhesive labels are prepared and sold, which have only to be wetted and applied in the same way as postage stamps. To avoid confusion, and to prevent things being missent, it is advisable to remove the labels having reference to previous journeys. As a crowning precaution, it would be as well to place the name and destination of the owner of the luggage inside as well as outside, so that in the event of the latter being destroyed, a clue to the claimant may be furnished. The number of articles which are constantly traveling out of their legitimate course, through carelessness in the matter of address, exceed belief. Some curious stories could be told of railway travelers and their luggage, chasing each other half over the United Kingdom, never happening to reach the same place together, so that the adventures of Japhet in search of his father, or Caleb's in search of a wife, are but tame and uninteresting narratives compared with Tompkins in quest of his trunk. Traveling equipage. There are perhaps few things upon which human ingenuity has been brought to bear with such force as traveling conveniences. The distant traveler and the tourist, the family man and the bachelor, he whose means and desires are unlimited, and he whose resources are circumscribed, and whose requirements are few, has each been considered. Many of us can remember the clumsy and cumbrous trunks and boxes of a bygone period, rendered clumsier and heavier still by outworks of brass-headed nails and bands of iron. Also, those extraordinary carpet bags in which nothing could lie flat, and from which everything emerged in a dreadfully dilapidated state. Mais nous avons changé tout cela, and now traveling trunks, portmanteaus, bags, etc., may be had in every conceivable variety of make, shape, and size. For family purposes, a species of large trunk has been invented, which, when its outer covering is removed, resembles a chest of drawers, partaking indeed of all the convenience of that well-known article of household furniture, without its cumbrousness. Trunks there are also of a smaller size, divided into compartments, affording facilities for arranging the wardrobe, and for separately placing away each article of dress. Of portmanteaus there exists a great variety, some on a large scale and substantially made, so as to approach nearly the genus trunk, others with collapsing propensities, enabling the capacity of the receptacle to be considerably extended when occasion requires, and materially diminishing the bulk when not in use, by which means it becomes a large or a small portmanteau according to the contents. Another portmanteau is made of a size to admit of its being placed under the railway seat, and has the handle placed in such a manner that it may be easily carried by the owner. An equal amount of ingenuity has been displayed in connection with traveling bags. There is one of a hybrid nature, being a traveling bag upwards and a portmanteau downwards, proving as convenient as the latter and as portable as the former. Another kind of bag is made to open square, enabling the articles to be placed in on a firm basis, and not coaxed or jammed in sideways as in the ordinary bag. As traveling bags are put into requisition more generally than any other kind of traveling gear, it will not be amiss to describe a bag recently introduced, which is made to contain the various toilet requisites, as well as articles of attire, and which possesses the combined advantages of compactness and portability. This bag is constructed to open in such a manner as to present the whole of the fittings standing erect in the center, leaving the sides free. By a simple contrivance it is further made to open at the bottom. On 2 boards or standards are displayed the fittings. The boards, being supplied with a long hinge and handle, may be lifted out of the bag and made to stand firmly on a table. The sides then lying flat are in a convenient position for packing. The inner parts of the sides are provided with strong flaps, and also strong elastics and fasteners to confine any article packed under them. One side of the bag can be opened to the bottom, leaving the other side still upright. The bag can be used without the fittings, the whole interior being then available for packing besides the flaps. It is also supplied with a new form of handle, the ends of which slide in grooves, thereby allowing it to lie quite flat on the top of the frame. From bags we come to a species of knapsack, which is generally strapped on to the back, but being fitted with a handle on the top, it may, when not used as a knapsack, form a convenient substitute for a traveling bag. Haversacks and wallets come next in order. These are made to contain a change of linen, toilet requisites, etc., and are slung across the shoulder by a strap. For persons who are going short journeys, or who intend to pedestrianize, this is perhaps the best kind of traveling appendage that can be conceived. It renders its wearer at once independent and easy. He can go from place to place without being importuned by touts and tag-rag. He enters an inn and leaves it without any of that parade or sensation which even the smallest of traveling bags appears to engender, and he can always have whatever he requires ready at hand, and soon becomes so accustomed to his general burden as to be scarcely aware that he is carrying anything at all. Dressing cases are designed of every form and variety, and in keeping with the utilitarian spirit of the age, are also made to combine with the customary portmanteau or traveling bag, the articles being so disposed as to fill up vacancies which would otherwise remain unappropriated. Another convenient form of dressing case is that where the toilet requisites are spread, if we may so term it, on a strip of leather, and are then capable of being rolled up into a small compass. Nor have ladies been forgotten in the matter of traveling equipage. There are ladies' wardrobes, ladies' portmanteaus, ladies' compendiums, ladies' bonnet trunks, etc., each admirably adapted for the various purposes to which it will be put. The traveling receptacles chosen and the luggage packed, the next consideration is fixing the time of departure. In answer to the question whether it is better to travel by day or by night, we should say that much depends on the constitution and temperament of the traveler. It is decidedly imprudent for a delicate person to expose himself to the night air, which to some extent he must do, however securely the doors and windows of the carriage may be closed. Nor can the deprivation of the usual night's rest be conducive to health, for although in some exceptional cases there are travelers who can sleep as soundly on the railroad as in their beds, the majority of travelers, in spite of every effort, fail on procuring any slumber beyond that homeopathic amount familiarly known as 40 winks. But setting aside the drawback of broken rest, some persons maintain that there are certain recommendations which render night traveling preferable to traveling by day. One is that people are, generally speaking, more sociable. The darkness and stillness of night appear to dispel that distrust and shyness with which English travelers habitually regard each other by day, so that the journey is made agreeable by conversation and the interchange of courtesies. To the very timid, another recommendation is that there is less chance of collision, the line being comparatively clear, an extra precaution being taken to prevent the possibility of accident. Some persons prefer starting by the last train at night to the first train in the morning, because the excitement attendant on the journey and the dread of oversleeping themselves entirely breaks up their night's rest and renders them in a very unfit state to set out upon their travels. If the day be chosen, the hour of departure should be regulated to some extent by the time of arrival. It is very awkward, for instance, to invade the domicile of a country friend in the middle of the night, and owing to the absence of suitable arrangements, it may prove equally unpleasant to the invader. In cases where the traveler is bound for some across-country place and has to depend upon a public conveyance to transport him to his final destination, he should assure himself that the omnibus, coach, or fly will be at the station to meet the train he travels by, and on extraordinary occasions he may secure the attendance of a conveyance by a polite request, either by post or telegraph, being forwarded to the superintendent of the station at which he intends to alight. Letters of advice, etc. When the traveler is about to visit an hotel or lodging house, he will ensure a comfortable reception by writing a letter, a few days prior to his departure, to the proprietor of the house he intends staying at, instructing him to prepare certain rooms and make such other arrangements as may be necessary. It would be as well if the letter were posted in sufficient time for an answer to be received before the day of starting, so that the traveler may be assured of his arrangements being carried out, or in the event of it being impossible to comply with his request, that he may be made acquainted with the fact. Even when the visit is about to be paid to a friend, where there is always a welcome, the proposed visit should be notified to save inconvenience to all parties. There are very few people who like to be taken by surprise, and the usual exclamation of, "If I had only known that you had been coming," is sufficiently indicative of the disappointment felt. Should you require a lady's carriage, a horse box, or a carriage truck, write to the station master a day or two previously, as they are not always to be had at the moment. In cases of invalids or decrepit persons, it would also be as well to write to the station master or other authority, to endeavor to secure such conveniences and comforts most favorable to the sufferer's infirmities. At the same time, it should be borne in mind that although there is every disposition on the part of the different railway companies to be as considerate as possible, still they cannot be expected to confer special advantages on individuals to the detriment of the public interest and the general working of the establishment. Eve of departure. We have now arrived at a period within a few hours of starting on the intended journey, say the night before. At this juncture, the traveler, like a wary general, reviews his forces and places his baggage in order, ascertaining that the addresses are all properly affixed, the locks secured, and the straps and cords fastened. If the intention be to start very early in the morning, a vehicle should be engaged overnight, and the driver instructed to be at the door in ample time for the removal of the luggage and the getting to the station. But by the time the vehicle arrives, you yourself should be ready to step into it. To this end, it will be necessary to ask a policeman or some other person whose duty takes him abroad at night to call you at the proper hour. In some country towns, the people who have to attend the markets are in the habit of chalking opposite to their doors overnight the hour at which they wish to be aroused the next morning. Thus the policeman reads his instructions as he walks his beat and awakens the inmates accordingly. This hint might be acted upon by railway travelers, for the person who had been spoken to might forget the number of the house, the hour at which he was to call, or possibly lose sight of the circumstance altogether unless thus reminded. In many of the manufacturing districts of England, the factory hands employ a watchman who is paid by subscription and whose especial duty it is to arouse at certain hours those by whom he is employed. For this purpose he is armed with a long cane or wand, and the habitations of the factory people being for the most part low built, he is enabled to tap at the bedroom windows, and this he does in every case until he receives a response from within. It is well known that no sound from without sooner startles a sleeping person than a noise against the window. Acting upon this hint, the person who arouses the railway traveler might discharge against the window of his bedchamber a little gravel or a few small shot, following this up by a vigorous ring of the bell, the one sound effectually breaking in upon slumber, and the other acting as a reminder. But the best plan of all to ensure being in time for an early train is to sleep the night previously at an hotel adjoining or adjacent to the departure station. Here there will be little fear of awakening, as the bustle in the passages and various bedrooms of other early travelers will, generally speaking, be sufficient to awaken the heaviest sleeper. To avoid, however, the possibility of miscarriage, order the boots to call you at the required time in the morning. And with that rather surprisingly complicated advice about getting up, I think we'll end this evening's reading from the Railway Traveler's Handy Book, which frankly was a delight. I hope you enjoyed that as well. If you'd like to read this fascinating look at the past for yourself, I'll leave a link to an online copy from the Internet Archive in the show description. If you'd like to connect, suggest a boring book you'd like to hear read, or request more from one we've already started, you can drop me an email via our website, www.boringbookspod.com. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining me for this evening's reading. Until our next boring book, good night.